Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are living through a period that future historians will study as a masterclass in crisis management, or perhaps a masterclass in high stakes, kick the can sort of environment. Right now, as we speak, the Middle East is a powder keg. The Strait of Hormuz, the jugular vein of the world's energy supply, is effectively blocked. Global crude prices are screaming towards the $120 a barrel mark. And in any normal economic cycle, this should mean that you and I would be paying 150 rupees or maybe 160 rupees for a liter of petrol this morning. And yet, when you drove to work today, the price of petrol or diesel was exactly what it was about 3 months ago. How? Is it magic? Is it a miracle? Or is it a very calculated, very risky set of aces that the Indian government has pulled from its sleeve? Today, we are not just talking about fuel prices, we are talking about strategic leadership in a VUCA world. What does VUCA stand for? Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Today, we are going to look at how India is decoupling itself from the global chaos that it's surrounded with and the individual burden being carried by our oil companies and the May 2026 reality that may be waiting for us just round the corner after the state elections. Before we look at the solution, we must understand the problem. Why is the Strait of Hormuz so critical? Imagine a single doorway through which 20% of the world's total oil consumption must pass. And that is the Strait of Hormuz. For India, it's even more critical. Historically, nearly 60% of our crude came from the Persian Gulf, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the UAE. Now, when that doorway is blocked, the import parity price called as IPP grows through the roof. And if you look at the maths of the crisis, to look at that, let's look at the basic formula for what we pay at the pump. One is the retail price that you see at the pump. Now, how is that calculated? That is the global price in dollar terms multiplied by the exchange rate. Okay. In US dollar and conversion into Indian rupees, etc. Then the OMCs, the oil marketing companies, have their refining margins. Then on top of that, they will add the central tax, that is the excise, plus the state tax, which is the VAT, and that gives us the final pump price. Now, in April 2026, that is today, the component has spiked. That is that the price at which we buy the oil into the dollar conversion rate has gone up by nearly 40 to 50%. Now, in a free market, our fuel bill should have jumped up by at least rupees 25, if not 50 rupees. I'm saying 50 rupees per liter, but it hasn't, and that too in 1 month alone. But it's not. Why? Because the government has decided to intervene in the variables of this equation. What can the government control? So let's dive into the ACEs. As leaders, you know that when the external environment becomes hostile, you have to change your internal strategy. And here is how India is doing it. So the ace up your sleeve of the government sleeve, ace number one, what one can call as the Russian pivot. This is also could be called as the geopolitical sidestep. And this, like In my episodes on Swarajya, CEO of the Swarajya movement of Shivaji's thing, you could call it the Swarajya tactic. So when the traditional path is blocked, you find a mountain pass that the enemy didn't expect. Now, since 2022, India has been quietly shifting its reliance away from the Middle East. And I'm sure you're already aware of what has happened in the last 7 8 months about us buying more Russian oil at a discounted price, and then the US objected to it. We're reducing finally the amount of oil that we are buying from Russia. All has been going on. But now with the current Middle East crisis, the Iran, Israel, and the US crisis, war going on, we pivoted back to Russia. Now, today in 2026 in April, Russia is among our largest supplier, accounting for nearly 45% of our total oil imports. Of course, we have also diverted the purchase from another 40 sources, but Russia is still the largest. This does give us a strategic advantage. However, because the Russian Urals crude, it's called, doesn't come through the Strait of Hormuz. It comes through the Baltic Sea and the Black Seas. And that creates a difference. And therefore, in logistically, we have bypassed the Hormuz choke point. Physically, we bypassed it. While the rest of the world is still scrambling for the Middle Eastern barrels because they have an anathema to buy from Russia, though now I understand some have started buying because they don't have an option. However, India's supply lines remain open, though there is a higher shipping cost. So let's be clear, India's energy security is no longer a hostage to Middle Eastern geography. We have dismantled the Hormuz trap by diversifying our oil orders to 41 nations and securing supply lines from the right from the Americas, Venezuela to West Africa. And while the Russian pivot provides us a strategic discount, our true ace is India's emergence as the world's refining fortress. So we don't just buy oil, we command the value chain. That is, by processing the crude in world class facilities and exporting the finished fuel to a desperate West, India has become a global stabilizer. So we aren't just surviving this crisis, we are leading through it. And that brings us to ace number two. Even before we come to the tax, remember, but even though we are getting the oil, it is still coming at a costly price. Earlier, it was $60 per barrel. The oil now still costs us maybe $100 a barrel, if not 120. Because Russia doesn't give it to us cheap also. They are extracting their pound of flesh. Anyway, at least we are getting the oil. Rather than our pumps running dry, the price may be higher, should have been higher. At least the pumps are not dry. The second is that the government is used to ensure that the oil prices do not shoot up. As apparently, we hear in Pakistan, they've gone up by 300 rupees per liter. Gone up. Could have happened here. But the government has somehow protected us. Let's see how. So this is by the tax shield. What might call as the fiscal sacrifice that the government is doing. So on March 27th, we saw a move that surprised many economists. The central government slashed excise duty to almost nothing. That's what was in their hand. So they effectively said, we will stop earning money from fuel so the common man can keep moving. Good. And by cutting excise duty from rupees 13, they brought down rupees 3. And this created a rupees 10 per liter buffer for the price reduction. So, in leadership terms, this is, I would say, leading from the front. That is, the leader, the state, the government is taking the first hit to protect the front line, that is, the economy. But remember, every rupee cut in tax is a rupee which is not available for expenditure on infrastructure or social schemes. It's a trade off. Ace number three that the government has used is what I would call as the financial firewall, the silent martyrs, I would say. And this is a fairly controversial ace. So, our state owned oil marketing companies, that's the OMCs, your IOCL, BPCL, HPCL, have, I'm sure, been told, inverted commas, to absorb the losses. And right now, these companies are actually buying the oil at maybe 100, $120 per barrel and selling it at a price equivalent maybe about $85 per barrel. And this is called as the under recovery. As of today, the OMCs are losing roughly 105 rupees per liter on diesel and 24 rupees per liter on petrol. They're resorting to some accounting tricks over here, and they're using what is called as a refinery transfer discount. Essentially, the refineries are being forced to sell to the marketers at a loss. This is like a company keeping its product price low while the raw material costs have doubled just to maintain market share. It looks great from the outside, but inside in the engine room, it is overheating because they cannot sustain these losses for long. Ace number four. This is the tiered pricing, that is luxury versus necessity. The government has applied what is called, I can call it as a Robin Hood strategy. If you use this standard petrol for your scooter or small car, the price is frozen. But if you have a high performance SUV or a luxury car that requires XP100 or a premium diesel, and you are then paying the true price, which is, I think, in some metros has crossed already about the 160 rupees per liter. Why? Because they are using the premium segment to cross subsidize the mass segment. Now, let's address the question everyone is thinking, but few are saying aloud. Why is this happening now? We are currently in the middle of a massive state election cycle. West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Assam, and the model code of conduct is in place. And that brings us to what is called as the election freeze phenomena. Historically, in India, fuel prices have a strange habit of becoming allergic to global hikes during the election months. In 2017, we had the UP elections. Prices stayed steady for 15 days despite a crude spike. In 2018, Karnataka, they froze for 19 days. In 2021, Bengal, they froze for nearly 2 months. Let's take a reality check over here. The government knows that a 10, 20 rupees or a 30 rupees hike in petrol can sway a silent voter way more than any manifesto. So the aces that we just discussed are being used as a temporary political shield. And this is called as a spring effect. I mean, imagine a physical spring and global prices are pushing it down. And the four aces that we talked, or government aces that the government is holding, is putting that spring in place. Now, what happens when you take the hand away? The spring snaps back. The date to watch, May 5th, 2026, that is next month. Once the final votes are cast in West Bengal on 29th of April, the results are out, the economic physics will take over. The OMCs cannot sustain a 100 rupees per liter loss for a single day more than absolutely necessary. As a leadership catalyst, when we look through this crystal ball, I look at this through the lens of governance. There are three lessons here for every leader in this crystal ball webinar. One is the tactical wins, versus the strategic debt, I would say. The government is winning the tactical battle by keeping the inflation low and winning potentially the elections. But they are incurring strategic debt. The OMCs will need a bailout, and the fiscal deficit will then widen. Are you solving today's problem by mortgaging your tomorrow? Now, this all now boils down to managing the narrative. The government has successfully shifted the blame for high prices. When they shifted the brain because it will eventually come, and they shifted thing to the war and the foreign powers while taking the credit for the current stability. In leadership, how you frame a crisis determines how much patience capital your stakeholders give you. The captain's choice. In the Mahabharata, there is a concept of Apaddharma, the morality of a crisis. Sometimes the leader must do what is wrong in the long term, that is, incurring debt, to do what is right in the short term, preventing a social riot. The question is, do you have an exit plan? As we look at the crystal ball, what happens next? Here is my focus for the post election thaw. And it's just a crystal ball gazing. I'm no great pundit to tell you that, but it's my thoughts. A daily creep, meaning don't expect a 30 or a 40-day hike in one single day. Expect a 80 paise to a rupee hike every day for the next 40 days after 5th of May. And this is what is called as the price boiling, which means if you look at if you heard this story, if you take a pan and put a hot water in that and put a frog, the frog will immediately jump out of it. But if you have a normal pan, you put the frog inside, the frog is very comfortable and happy, and you slowly over a period of time increase the temperature. The frog doesn't jump immediately, and that's what I think the government should do. So it should raise the prices slowly. This will lead to the second thing called as the logistics inflation, meaning as the diesel prices rationalize upward towards 110, maybe 120, maybe even 150 per liter, your supply chain costs will definitely rise. And if you're in manufacturing or retail, budget for a 15% to 20% increase in logistics cost by QE3 2026. The third one would be the interest rate hammer. To control the inflation caused by the fuel hike, the Reserve Bank of India will likely have to hike the rates, which means the cheap money era is definitely pausing. Folks, we've covered a lot today. We looked at the Russian pivot, the tax cuts, the OMC burden, and the political reality of the elections. The government has placed its aces fairly brilliantly to keep the country steady during a global war. But as any card player knows, eventually you run out of cards and you have to then play the hand you are dealt. In all likelihood, by mid May, the fuel holiday will be over. The question is, are you and your business ready for the bill? Remember, a leader's job isn't to prevent the storm, but to make sure that the ship is buoyant enough to ride out the storm. Strategic, stay curious, and look forward to more such episodes from the Commander's Compass, which is called now as the Crystal Gaze, where we try and predict the future, even though I'm no astrologer. Thank you. Jai Hind.